Here we are in episode number 8. This is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. As we talked about last week, you are awakening. You might remember the Napoleon Hill story about it taking years before his awakening, and you are awakening. Don't get caught up in people pushing your buttons. Well, no, let me restate that. Do get caught up in people pushing your buttons. In fact, welcome having your buttons pushed. Huh? Are you crazy, you're saying? But seriously, we need people to push our buttons. Otherwise, we won't know what buttons we have. Hello, everyone. This is John with the Simple Success Podcast, financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Because we know you want to show us some serious love in return for the tremendous benefits you get from us, please head over to https://anchor.fm/simple success. That's one word, simple success, whack support. There, you can choose from a $9.99 per month investor level of support, a $4.99% level, or a basic intro level of just 99 cents per month. That's not much when you compare it to a stockbroker, right? And this is so much more sensible. To leave us a voice message, which just might see the light of day in a future podcast, go to https://anchor.fm/simple success. Again, one word, simple success, whack message. I won't repeat those links because weird. And anyway, show notes. In that spirit, today's episode is This is a Test. This is only a test. There was this thing when I was a kid where you'd just be there watching TV, not bothering anybody, just watching cartoons, doing innocent kid stuff. And then all of a sudden the TV screen goes into this weird monochrome pattern. That's black and white to the rest of us. That it doesn't look like anything else. Okay, it sort of looks like a countdown timer that used to be in front of every movie, except it usually says, please stand by or something like that. There's a link to that in the show notes. Anyway, there'd be an announcement about it being a test of the emergency broadcast system, followed by a tone that ran for 60 seconds. I don't link to that tone because lawyers, and it would kind of like me yelling out the wake-up word for your smart speaker, which maybe starts with hey or okay or that, a word. Then we'd get another announcement that was clearly always intended as an introduction to today's episode title, This is a Test. This is only a test. After that, the voice would go on, telling us that if it had been real, we'd have been directed to some other source of constant information, probably a local radio station. Now, before you say what you are no doubt thinking, which is, how in the heck are you going to bring this around to investing? I have to say that I am glad you are thinking. Yet I want to refine your thinking a bit, and I will do that right now. When we heard that thing at the end, this is a test, this is only a test, what we now call a disclaimer, we all collectively, wherever we were, relaxed. The threat or potential threat, or whatever it was, wasn't real. Not to worry. And so we didn't. This relates to investing, to financial life coaching, especially financial life coaching from a happiness perspective, a whole lot. A great quote from the Dalai Lama reportedly goes something like, if you can do something about it, do it and don't worry about it. If you can't do something about it, don't do it and don't worry about it. The don't worry about it, of course, being the key connector. And really good investing is like watching paint dry. I've said that to dozens of people over the years, and it's true right here. In the investing world, we make it very hard on ourselves instead, which is one of the biggest sources of worry. When what we want is easy, we can bristle when someone suggests that easy and freedom from choice are really the same thing. Regardless, we have dozens of choices in brokerage firms if we're not the do-it-yourself type, and within that, often dozens of offices and personalities to choose from. If we want to invest online, we have dozens of choices there too. Some of those provide help with investing, while most are completely hands-off. Some places, whether in person or online, focus on specific assets like stocks or like real estate or Bitcoin or many, many other things. And that's all well-intentioned, and it's good to have such an open approach to things. On the downside, though, it's complicated, and our goal is to make things fun. A big, huge step toward fun is simple. Things have to be easy until they become habits. Even if we're the most stoic of all the stoics, we will end up reverting to our habits. And while we can both have and nurture bad habits as well as good, when we line up what we do with what we want, we have motivation to bring only good habits to pass. Things which serve us, or more accurately, things in which we've already decided to be willing to find out why that's good. As we said last week, the biggest step you or anyone can take toward getting to any goal successfully is to make it simple and fun and done. How we make that simple, or rather one way we make that simple, is to remove the shock value. Details on that coming up. let's get on with some of the things to remember about today's topic, which again is, this is a test. This is only a test. The first one is set a goal. Can having a goal be just a test? Sure. Now, how can that be? Well, when you think about it, anything that you want to do and do it really well is something you're going to test. If you decide, well, to be real, when you decide to switch over to an electric vehicle, you're going to apply some tests to relieve your own uncertainty over the change. Possibly the most important test for any of us to recognize is that we all, in fact, have sub-questions on the topic. We think our question to ourselves is, should I buy an EV? In the spirit of Winston Churchill, though, I'll say that has already been decided. The only factor yet to be decided for you is when. So, our minds go to those sub-questions. In the case of EVs, those might be, how far can I go on an electric charge? How does not buying gas mean I save money? Why spend that kind of money? And of course, there's always, not buying gas means how much earth saved. In the investing world, we think the question is something macro or big, like, when can I retire? Or should I take Social Security? But those things are really just simple math questions. And I mean super simple, like multiplication and stuff. There's no trigonometry, there's no geometry, there's no calculus in there. The real thing is those sub-questions our minds go to. How come I'm not rich like Warren or Bill? How come I'm not a super brain like Elon? How come I... whatever. Remember, if you can't do something about something, then keep not doing something and don't worry about it. Thanks, Dalai Lama. What you can do is frame it as a good thing and get started doing it. If you haven't completed a goal before, then this one's your first, and it's the big one. Develop and test a system. I've learned, more recently than I care to admit, that it's not just about having a goal. Notice I said not just. It is about having a goal. It's not just about having a goal. In addition, you have to have a system to follow which gets you there. If you don't, then you have to go from 0 to 60. Well, at least in the American parlance, which shocks our systems. It's okay for a dragster, or lately a Tesla, to do that really fast. Our psyches, on the other hand, often need to have things be a bit easier. And with a system, you can focus on being as good today as yesterday, or maybe even 1% better, which is another topic we'll cover. You don't, on the other hand, need to pay very close attention to a picture which might be bigger than you need it to be right then. You will find that when you put effort into something that's small, that's behind the scenes, that the bigger picture will emerge, made up from the effort in each of those scenes. You're going to pick an investment that works for you, and by works, I mean the size of it, the frequency of it, and even the type of it, which is different for different people, and that's okay. Eventually, that investment will be part of the tapestry that you use to answer the bigger questions. Just for today, though, you will not be distracted by that. Don't shock yourself. Just before the break, I said that it was very important to remove the shock value. Let me give you an example. I've said before, and I'll say again, that it is critical to make things simpler all the time. And then even more simpler. Well, I know that's not good English, but you know what I meant. I just heard a guy talking about something financial people call the 4% rule. This is a pretty important concept, actually, but even so, this guy made it even more complicated. He thought it was smart to frame it this way. He said something like,
surmounted by a malleable logarithmic casing in such a way that the two spurving bearings were in a direct line with a panometric fan.
No, really. He said if you're invested at 6 to 8% and you take money out at 4%, wait, stop. He's just rabbit-holed you. It doesn't matter if you're invested at 1% or 1,000,000%. The only questions are the rate that you take out your money and how long do you live while taking that out. And when it gets more complicated, fewer people will do it. If you don't believe me, just look at the current debate over which COVID-19 vaccine is the best one. The rule is very simple. Fast forward to retirement day. That's when you don't have a boss or a paycheck anymore. If you take 4% or less of your total basket every year to live on, you have a decent chance of making it just fine. That's it. Doesn't need to be harder. Sure, you can make it more precise if you need to, but for most people, just doing it at all is a big win. But that's not the worst disservice here. Nope. By burying this easy idea in complexity, the speaker hid the logic in the next step. He said that you would be financially free when you had that 4% times 25. Maybe this is too deep in the woods too quick, or maybe I'm just used to the discussion from having been in the business. But the short end of what he said was that you're only going to live for 25 years. Maybe that's great if you're 80, but not if you're 60 or 50 or less. In fact, I'd be really surprised if the first baby to live to age 125 hasn't already been born. To get started investing, heck, to get started anything, don't shock yourself. Make it gradual. I pointed toward this idea a minute ago. We all face hurdles of different sizes and shapes, mostly hurdles that we ourselves create for ourselves. But no matter what they are or where they come from, we solve them by simply acting, by not being frozen, not being blocked, but instead being flexible, adapting our systems as needed in order to reach our goals. It does not matter whether or not we can rely on any kind of external warning system like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast. Why? Because we don't need to do so. Allow your goals to feel good. Okay, sure. Here's the part where I'm supposed to let my fantasies of an easy life replace reality, right? Well, no, not exactly. Take a close look at that question. Even if it's one you know better than to ever ask out loud. And yet we do it to ourselves all the time. Why? Again, notice the why. It's already been done. Our brains need only copy the result. We don't need to spend time imagining or inventing things. Oh, but if we only did. I did. I learned to flip the script, to let little things accumulate into a big picture. I learned to let things feel good, and then to capitalize on that very feeling of good. In fact, it's all good, or as W. Clement Stone would say, that's good. Remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. And the last question that I heard from people, is there anything else I need to know right now? Probably there's a lot of things, but we'll simplify that for the moment with the general advice to not make assumptions. Don't assume, for example, that one type of investing is the be-all and end-all. Show me someone saying something like, to heck with your 401k, put everything into real estate, and I'll show you someone who makes their living in real estate. The reverse is also true, though, and other very related things are true, too. An assumption we get sometimes with that emergency broadcast system is that it must have anticipated future technology. Huh? Sure, we see that when people wonder out loud if they will see a tornado warning on their Twitter feed. Well, you might, but only if the people you follow are tweeting about it. TV broadcasters, including cable and satellite, as well as the traditional airwaves, all had to give their time freely to that effort. But no such law exists regarding the internets. That means Netflix isn't going to tell you not to go outside unless it means you'll watch more Netflix. I also would not rely on smart speakers for emergency warnings of any kind, at least not yet. Someday they'll have amazingly great performance in that regard, and we'll all move on to a different, air quotes, problem. For now, though, I might as well suggest that you try breathing inside a tornado. If you do that, and you survive, please let me know how that works for you. Here's a great personal example of a time when I tried to breathe in a tornado. This is the part of the podcast where I'm learning to put those tangents I often go on. I had to create this segment to have a place to put those tangents, with the idea of tying them into the topic of the episode. Thanks to my rabbit hole advisor, I'm undertaking an effort to stay on topic and not fall down those rabbit holes like I know I do sometimes. I've also learned from her that, well, at least in Australia, one can avoid falling down rabbit holes by talking to the rabbit. In other words, letting experts go on those tangents. I'm going to keep that in mind when I'm looking for guests for future episodes of this podcast, so everyone is forewarned, in a humorous way, of course. So, skipping the detail, I'm finally convinced that doing such a thing would, at best, be distracting. And just like magic, I turn the question around, this time into a statement. What if becomes yes, I will. It's flipping the script. Remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Coaching happiness. Since a big part of that is your happiness, I'm going to walk down another street, one without rabbit holes, by calling on expert guests, and most importantly, you. When we're done with that, we'll point you to the voice message link for future posts. In this Simple Success podcast, as well as in our webinars and masterclasses, we are very, very much going to want to hear your story. Well, to be real, I mean in future episodes of the podcast's webinars and masterclasses. This means you. Your participation is critical to our mutual simple success. It's important to know how you think, what you've thought, what you've tried, and what you've been unsure of trying. As we told you at the beginning, and as you also find in the show notes, we have ways you can contact us. It involves a special link where you can leave us a voice message, which just might see the light of day in a future podcast. We may have an email address for you as well in the future, and we'll let you know when that happens. Together, we're going to make it great. We're going to do what even we didn't think possible. We know a lot about you already because we know ourselves. For example, we know that you know how to listen to a podcast. We also know that you probably know how to subscribe. The reason every podcast asks you this is because when you subscribe, you automatically download all future episodes of that podcast. This means better rankings, more attention from advertisers, more money, and that means more and better stuff for you. So your motivation is simple and easy. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. There is no try, there is only do. Remember, this is financial life coaching from a happiness perspective. Right after this, we'll explore some more important detail you should know. But for now, use your imagination to help create your story. And to remind you, everyone listening can head to that voice message link in the show notes to record a voice message for a future podcast. Anyway, to wrap up the story, this is a test. This is only a test. That sounds like something that Alexander Graham Bell might have said to Watson exactly 145 years ago today. I'm recording this March 10th, 2021, the 145th anniversary of the first telephone call. But even better is that according to the internet, today is the day of awesomeness. Man, you gotta love that. And of course, as we all know, if it's on the internet, it must be true, right? Are you getting better yet? This is a test. This is only a test. That was a well-intentioned system, and yes, it can be argued that the financial industry has systems which are in place to keep us safe from decisions that we don't know how to make ourselves. That's well-intentioned too. But it goes over the edge into a lack of self-confidence for most of us, though, as we're led to believe that we can't do it on our own, and that's just not true. We have to be confident in our ability, and we have to be confident in the system. I don't mean somebody else's system, I mean our own system, like the one I mentioned earlier in this pod. It's the roadmap we use as we travel towards our goals. Having safeguards is very important, just like having goals is very important, but it's even more important to get out there and wrap yourself in your own system, and get going, and not worry about it. Notice that some of what I say is very repetitive in addition to being positive. The psychology concept behind that is, just like last week, the familiarity principle, also known as the mere exposure effect. I've linked to that in the show notes. Now, since you want more of this, you start by subscribing, and I told you why all podcasts want you to subscribe. Then you pick your goal. Then you start doing it. We know you need help. We have one-on-one coaching for you. You have to take the first steps, though, and the biggest one is your attitude. If you love and follow what we're doing here, then when asked for anything, you think and say only one thing, and that is, yes, I will. Next week, we're going to look at another concept, and that is the power of habit. I took that title from a book by Charles Duhigg, and it acknowledges a very important part of our mindset. The absolute simplest way to get going on investing is to make it a habit, and that's what we're going to do. Then we dedicate ourselves to making simple into fun. We're going to make the habits easy to swallow to start, but also easy to measure and easy to grow in that 1% better way that we'll get to in a later episode. Remember, slow, simple, easy, and fun. We're going to bring this into the world of investing. It's going to be a great episode. But for now, remember, happy Blueberry Popover Day. I mean, all you need to do is practice, after which you'll get good. Gracias por escuchar. A la prochaine. We come to you on a regular basis with podcasts, webinars, and masterclasses, together aimed at freeing you from the chains that the financial industry puts on all of us. Most of us don't even know what those chains are, and in this spirit, we're not going to waste time trying to solve problems people don't even know they have. Better, let's go up to common ground here. We can overcome, and we will do so. Join me for the ride of your life in a good way.